Welcome to D&D Author Showcase. I'm Chad Robert Morgan, and I'm here with Scott Campbell.
Yep. Scott to my friends, Robert S. Campbell for anyone that has got my books. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have known you as Scott for so long. I saw your book. I was like, who's this
Who's this
Robert
Robert
asshole?
guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk about, you just had your. Now, is this the first book that you've completely published from start to finish? Because I know you've done a lot of writing professionally.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I've told a lot of people that when writing design documents for video games and things, some of them are much longer than novels and have far more information in them. So I feel like I've written many, many books, but this is the first one I've actually, put out and published, so that anyone can take a look at it instead of just the few people working on the project.
So, the book right here. The Rats Beneath the Walls, and this is a sequel to a Lovecraft short story, correct?
That is correct. So in 1924, Lovecraft published his short story called The Rats in the Walls, which is one of my favorite stories of his, in Weird Tales magazine. And I had this idea for basically, kind of like the spiritual successor, a sequel to the novel, just, building on some of the crazy things that happened in that story, especially like how it affected the bloodline of the De La Poors, the family involved in that story, and like I was just imagining like what would it be like 100 years afterwards, and so thus we have I kind of wrote up a modern take on the story. It's not a rewrite. It's building on the original story and kind of treating that as almost like a prequel to this novel. I so anyway, it has been exactly 100 years since Lovecraft published that story, and I was like, I gotta get my book done and have it, on the 100th year anniversary. It's just necessary to get it in that window, and so I wanted to not only kind of like have a modern telling of that a kind of a Lovecraftian tale, but the original story, The Rats in the Walls, is not really part of his Lovecraftian mythos. It's just kind of its own separate story, more like a gothic ghost tale or some ghost story, horror story, something like that. But the ideas behind it are so very good. I kind of wanted to push it just a little bit towards the rest of his mythos and things like that. So yeah, no spoilers or anything, but yeah, the book kind of does that a little bit. Kind of takes the this idea of like this ancestral heritage of weirdness and kind of weaves it more into what could be more of the Cthulhu-esque mythos.
You mentioned that the original story showed up in Weird Tales. I take it that's what inspired the cover.
In fact, that is it kind of the cover itself, or at least the layout, is an homage to that original cover. The
Where,
title of the cover on the cover is the public domain version of Weird Tales, the one that they used 100 years ago on the magazine. So I just again wanted to just have a nod of the hat to the not just the magazine, but the old man and all the wonderful stories that he wrote.
and the cover was done by our good friend Chris Williams,
Chris
correct?
Williams, yeah.
Yes.
What I wanted was a picture of Exham Priory off in the corner in some desolate moonlit kind of like uh, mountains and forest with a big bright moon shining in like the storm-filled sky, and I wanted to have this like quite literally this river of rats running from the entrance of the priory across a bridge and towards the bottom of the cover towards the reader. And so Chris, yeah, he and I are very deep into generative AI stuff, stable diffusion and things like that. And so we, I had the description, but Chris plugged it in and messed with a lot of the parameters, and it didn't seem to take him any time at all to get an amazing looking image, something that looked just like a cover that would be around in 1924, where you can actually see like the strokes of the paint brushes and everything else. So it's very authentic looking, but it was 100% generated by AI.
Speaking of AI, because I know we talked about this a bit, um, you like got this from like concept to actual printed version in like under 6 months.
Well, not exactly. I've had the idea for a very, very long time. I probably about 7 years or so. So I've done a ton of research, not just on the story and not just on all the things that Lovecraft had put into his stories. He's so good at weaving like the stuff that he's made up to the real life, like history of the world. And so I had to discern the two, and also try to figure out what some of his deeper meanings were in the story. And again, just lots of research on not just historical things, but cults from ages past to the heraldry of the English nobles, and you name it, right? So in doing that, and taking a ton of freaking notes and coming up with like how I want my story to kind of fit into everything, I broke everything down into chapters, and I kind of had an overview of like, all right, I want to talk about this in this chapter and this in this chapter, so I can slowly have the building of the suspense. Kind of want to make the whole book feel like a roller coaster, where it starts out a little slow, gives you some information, but then that horror, that dread starts to build and build and build, and then the payoff is at the end, and yeah. So once I had that kind of skeletal framework of the book done, I went through and I wrote the dialogue for all the characters, and I kind of had a bunch of bullet points for all the story beats and things like that. But what I did not have is a fully complete like written work, right? And so I did in fact look into an AI solution. And what I had found was Claude.ai. So I was able to do a couple of things. I made a character description document, talking about all the characters in the novel and how they act, their overall feelings, their outlooks on life, all that stuff. Fed that into the AI, and it learned that. And then I gave it the bullet points for chapter one, and also a text document of just a couple of paragraphs of text that I wrote, so that it can kind of discern how I write and everything else. And then I said, hey, write in my writing style using these characters, and we're trying to make a horror story here, and use these bullet points that I provided to flesh out the chapter one for the book. And I was absolutely amazed at how good it did. So it would produce something, and if I didn't like a particular thing about it, and I'd just have it go and redo it and say, focus more on this, less on this, whatever. But when I got it to a point where it read very well, there's usually very little editing I had to do. And what it gave me, everything was spelled correctly, all the grammar was correct, and just the punctuation, everything was like, pretty flawless. So I was, astounded. It was like having, an editor help me out, going through the entirety of the book. So I can't say that, this was an AI generated book, because there was on my behalf not only a ton of setup and a ton of overview, but a lot of editing, and as we went, is making sure that the story is, what I wanted it to be. Um, but yeah, a lot of AI. It's interesting though, because sometimes the AI can go off and start really hallucinating very badly on certain things, and it will also take certain uh, input that you give it, as gospel. So like if you said something like, "Hey, focus on this," you might find that every single sentence is going to in fact focus on what you talked about instead of it being more of a broad term like, "Hey, come back and talk about this." So yeah, like I said, a lot of editing, a lot of wordsmithing.
What did you mean by it would sometimes hallucinate?
So yeah, it did like to hallucinate a little bit, meaning that sometimes it would just go off on its own and start like creating new things for the story that I didn't want it to do. So I would have to continually say, no, 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 stick to the script, please. Um, because it was a very adult book, I would sometimes have adult language, adult situations, violent situations, and things like that. And it was trying to fight me on some of those, where it was like, I would have a horrific description of something and it would, like tone it down. And I kept having to say, no, 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 this is a book for adults. Please let me write like an adult and, treat this seriously. And it only took a little bit of prompting for it to understand, but just, straight up out of the box, it definitely wanted to keep things PG.
I've had similar experiences. I I don't lean quite as heavily on the AI, but I do find it useful at times, especially if I got a little bit of writer's block and I'm like, okay, I know what I need to have happen, but I'm not sure how to do it or how to get started. And I just like, okay, ChatGPT or Claude,
Hmm.
I want this to happen. You tell me. And usually when I do that, it'll spit out several pages, and what I read seems very um, like junior high schoolish in
Yes.
terms of, so it's like, okay, this isn't good. I can't just copy and paste this in, but it does give me a few ideas, and that, I use it like a thesaurus, right? It's like, give me some ideas,
Uh-huh.
and like, okay, this one's good, this one's shit. And then sometimes I'll have like a whole passage, and I'm like, hey, ChatGPT or Claude, or what do you recommend? Can we punch this up? Can we make this more exciting?
Hmm.
And there's been a lot of times when I go to ChatGPT, it's okay, I got the scene. Person is stabbing somebody with a knife, and then the demon bursts through the eardrum or whatever the hell
Yep.
I'm doing, and they will go, we think you need to contact professional help. Please
Uh-huh.
don't. And I have to, no, I'm writing a story. I have to explain to it that there was one time when it's like it would generate it and then it would delete it. It would generate it.
Really?
I'm sitting there like, tell me this, and it would generate all this stuff, and then I'm like, okay, this is cool, and then it would just go away, and there'd be this big thing going, this might be in violation of our
Yep.
terms and
Yep.
service, and I'm like,
I know it's like, come on, please let me be an adult. Well, I mean, I also had a similar problem with Claude. In one particular iteration, it was fighting me so hard. I basically said, okay, at the beginning of every chapter, I want you to put a warning that this is for adults and children should not have this. It has acts of violence and all this other stuff in it. And once it did that, it was okay saying whatever it needed. It just had to like put up some kind of warning or something like that. And then, of course, yeah, I just deleted that from the chapters. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know it's, AI is a very, very powerful tool, but when it's kind of reined back from the developers because, well, lawyers, yeah, I think it does stifle what you can do with the project or the product. But using it as inspiration, though, I found that it can do some pretty amazing things. Like if you have written yourself into a corner and you're like, well, God, what's going to happen with this? How are they going to get out of this? I've had it, come up with a couple of decent ideas that, I'm like, oh, you know what? The way you wrote it was stupid, but I can at least take the core seed of that thought and build it into something. But yeah, yeah.
That to me is when I find it the most benefit, where it's like again, me personally, if I was just going to go to Claude AI and say, write me a book and then publish it, then I'm not a writer,
Well,
right? That's,
yeah. And
you know,
even then it doesn't do a great job.
exactly.
You have to really hold its hand, tell it exactly what you want, exactly the writing style. You have to give it all sorts of not just examples, but you have to give it such a intricate breakdown of what you want the story to be. um, then you might start seeing some decent stuff. But if you're just like, write me a story, it's just it's never going to be what you want.
Yeah. I prefer using it like like we are saying, like a thesaurus, like an idea gen, like what are your suggestions? And then it's
Yeah.
up to me to pick or choose. To me, when you use it like that, it's not too much different. Have you ever like gotten like the emotional thesaurus or anything like that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I know exactly what you're talking
those
about. Yep.
books. Those books are great.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of the same thing where it's like I have a whole stack of those, and I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, this guy is in fear, or this guy's
Yep.
feeling. What can I say besides
He's in fear.
he's in fear?
Yeah.
That kind
He
of.
he trembles and sweats and yeah. It's
Yeah, well, I mean, I write a lot of horror, and I'm kind of hitting the same notes. I'm like, okay, let's spice this up a little bit.
mhm.
And so I get the thesaurus. I was like, oh, well, he could also be having, this symptom or that symptom, or so. This is a good idea. And there'd be a couple times I've run through ChatGPT, and it's like, oh, I didn't think about adding this, and it might just be a line, just a
Yeah.
single line, but it's enough to. Um, but again, that's my 2 cents. But
Yeah.
you use Claude to get this thing written from page one to published in something like 6 months, though, right?
Uh,
You did have,
it was a little less than that actually,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. It was an insane pace.
But I mean, again, it's like it was written in not very in a fairly short amount of time. But the amount of research, the amount of dialogue writing, the amount of like just breaking down the story into exactly what I want, that took a couple of years. I mean
Yeah.
that
So there
was
was a lot of
not
prep. There was a shit ton
lot
of
of
prep.
prep. But then, yeah, when I actually said, "Oh crap, I have to have this thing done at the 100th year anniversary," and even then for Comic Con, where I had to have the book done because we already had a booth and everything else ready. Yeah, it just became like, all right, well, gotta buckle up and do it.
So how was your first Comic Con?
Oh well, speaking of Comic Con, it's pretty amazing. I mean,
It's amazing how these segues just set themselves up like
yeah.
that. It's really.
So I had been to I mean I've been to WonderCon before. I've been to a couple of smaller ones, but never Comic-Con down in San Diego, and that was a freaking madhouse, but so amazing. I mean, just yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, everyone there was just awesome. I mean, just great people. I mean, everyone from the people working there to just, the people walking around the convention, everyone that we talked to. I mean, not just everyone I sold the book to, but everyone that came up to the booth, just looking, all just amazing people. So yeah, I love the fandom community. Oh, it's the best. But I mean, my first Comic Con, the first thing I realized is Comic Con is not there for people to sell books. It's there for people to sell merchandise.
Yeah.
If you have tchotchkes, if you have stuffed things, if you have T-shirts, if you have all sorts of different swag and stuff like that, that's what people are looking for. They're not looking for new books on the market. So even though I did sell, I mean, a decent amount, it
Now,
wasn't
now,
quite what I was looking
okay,
for.
back up. You said decent amount. I think you did
Yeah.
more than decent from what you told me.
Well, I mean, I was there the entirety of Comic Con.
Yes.
All the days, and I mean, we sold almost 200.
Okay, that's not decent. That is gangbusters. Like
Well,
I no, seriously. I know when we first talked, and I said if you sold 100, you were doing good, and you're like 100 a day. No, 100.
yeah.
When I did Comic Con, I had 3 books. I had Last Rite, Baby Eater, and the first Intergalactic Space Force combined in 5 days. I did 92.
Well, yeah,
So
so I
so
okay.
you've like doubled what I were doing
So I
with
think
one book.
I think we had a couple of things going for us. I think we had a really good spiel, saying that this was based on, H.P. Lovecraft, because you say the word Lovecraft, and there's a lot of people that go, what, Lovecraft? So, all the Lovecraft fans came to us. And then when we were saying that this is based on one of his stories, but it's a modern retelling in modern verbiage, and such like that, that got people a little bit more interested. And then when I kind of closed it with this is the 100th year anniversary of the short story, then, a lot of people are just like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. However, And this was something that that you actually said that I should do, and I'm not really, it's just not something I'm really great at, but it's the self-promotion thing.
Yeah.
Where I was going to have two posters that both just basically said the rats in the walls, and just have those on either side of the thing. But then after talking to you, you were like, well, what are some of the other things you've done? And put those up there. Make a poster about yourself. And I was like, nah, no one gives a crap. Why would I do
Yeah,
that?
right.
But I did, I just kind of was like, all right, fine. And so, I put down that, it's like, yes, I worked on Fallout, I worked on Neopets, The Darkest Fairy, and Mythry and Starblood Arena, and a couple other different things. And
Just that small little indie hit called Fallout. Yeah.
well, yeah, but that also had a tremendous draw.
Yeah.
Because they'd be looking around the booth as if, people would come into the booth and look around as if they were, interested, and then they'd look at the sign and say Fallout, and they'd be like, "What did you have to do with Fallout?" And it was like, "Yeah, I was the original lead designer of Fallout, back for the original Fallout," and they were just like, "Ugh." I mean, so
Yeah.
people would, they'd come by with like their families and have me sign stuff, and every one of them would buy a book, and it just, I was like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, again, I had some friends there that they were helping me work the booth, and they were saying that between Fallout and Neopets, The Darkest Fairy, those fans, they were like rabid. They
That was the one that surprised me when you told me about that. That you had a lot of hardcore Neopet fans
Yeah.
that
I
like
mean,
Fallout
that's
I
awesome.
understand,
Yeah.
but
But like Neopets, The Darkest Fairy, like a lot of people would come up and basically say, "Oh my gosh, this is like my favorite game as a kid. I love this game." And also, the Neopets booth was not that far away from us.
oh no shit.
Yeah, so all the the stuffed animals, plushies, and all the stuff was there. And yeah, actually, the president of Neopets came by to talk to me a little bit. And I mean, it's just, yeah, like I said, it was great times had by all. But I think that one self-promotional like poster probably sold at least 100 books. So
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, uh, I find books are a hard sell, right? Like
yeah.
I just did Son of Monsterpalooza. I sold, I think, 42 books, and like other authors are like, dude, you did well, that you did good and everything like that. Keep Son of Monsterpalooza is only 3 days versus 5 for San Diego Comic Con, first of
Hmm.
all, and it's also not nearly as big. I was also constantly cock blocked by Linda Blair, but that's another story. Um,
Good old Linda Blair.
yeah, I
Did she spit pea soup on you?
no, she didn't. No, but so her booth was her table was kitty corner to mine, and at first I'm like, oh, this is going to be exciting because I'm going to have spillover traffic from the celebrity because as you learn at Comic Con, celebrity helps.
Yeah, yeah.
But what happened in practice was every time somebody paid for a selfie, they would go out into the hall right in front of my booth and totally block me. And I'm sitting there trying to, I'm like, I'm over, over,
Oh, I
over.
see. I
Yeah.
see.
So
So every time someone's taking a selfie with her, they're the only people in front of your booth, and your signs are blocked and everything.
yeah,
Oh,
and I'm just like,
okay.
and and what's worse about it is I didn't want to complain because all the proceeds that she got from selling autographs goes to shelter animals. I'm like, how much of a dick do I have to be to sit there and say, can you please quit earning money for shelter animals or get the fuck
Exactly.
out of my, it's like,
Exactly. Right. It's like,
oh,
why don't you
Jesus.
toss some of that shelter money to me? Yeah.
I just felt like they're just looking really sad, start playing some Sarah McLachlan.
There you go. Exactly.
Um,
Well, I mean, but hey, you still start 42, right? So
Not bad,
not bad.
not bad. I need to do better.
But yeah, I'm already thinking of another book. So real quick, just kind of changing the subject slightly, but a lot of the ideas and things I've had for novels and things that hopefully in the future I'll be able to put out. Um, I've had many game designs, and they're, in my mind, they're pretty fleshed out. I have hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents and things like that on each one of these designs, just sitting in my, Dropbox folder that I've been accumulating over the years. And I've noticed that I have more game designs than I ever will have time to make them. And so in a way, it's like I want them to get out into the public, right? And I don't know that I'm ever going to have the chance to actually do those uh, on through a video game medium, mostly because video games, especially like big budget video games and things, you're talking like 4 to 7 years. You're talking anywhere between like 80 to sometimes 150 200 million dollars, right? It's a huge risk. It's a huge budget. It takes forever. So I'm like, you know what? I still think the story is a good idea. I just want to kind of put it out in novel format. So, I still get the idea out there, but I don't have to spend all the time trying to convince someone to give me millions and millions of dollars to make it real. So that is kind of what I'm going for in the future. However, the next book I'm thinking of writing is just because Lovecraft is such a near and dear to my heart. I wanted to write a book of short stories, and I have 5 short stories I've already kind of started working on, and I have a theme for the entirety of the book. It's like, what if each one of these short stories was written by a very famous author? How can I give you an example without destroying the whole thing? So the title of the book that is currently being worked on is called Cthulhu 451. Um, yeah. It's actually the main story is based on Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, but the twist is, what if the firemen, the ones that ran around burning books, were actually there to find occult books and burn those because something has happened to make the not just the governments but the public aware that there are horrible mythos things out there. And then, anyway, the story goes on to be a little bit crazy, but that's the impetus of it. And I want to try to write it in Ray Bradbury's, kind of like um his not just his verbiage but his pacing and such like that, so that it feels as though he could have potentially wrote this in lieu of Fahrenheit 451. So but yeah, a bunch of different stories, and I like I said, I have 5 of them. I think I want to have a few more to kind of complete it, because each short story is probably only going to be like maybe 40 pages or so. So
What you might want to think about,
yeah.
and this is just an idea, but I met an author. Well, I don't know if she was so much of an author so much as running the small press. But she was doing like a horror themed Christmas magazine kind of thing.
Okay.
Well, it was like a collection of short stories, um, an anthology that her goal was to publish annually around Christmas time, multiple different authors all contributing. Um, I know, like, for example, I was talking with Dicey Grenner earlier in the week, um, from the Sex and Horror podcast. She was talking about how she will work on short stories anthologies. So, to get other people noticed, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so like she might have a hardcore group of fans because she's been writing her books for some time and she's got the podcast, so she's got a following. But then she'll do a short story anthology where she'll maybe do one story in there, but then people will buy it to get her short story, but then they see some of the other people's short stories as well.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
So what you could do, depending on where you think, you can either like reach out to some of these people and get one of your short stories as part of this anthology, as kind of like advertising, right? Like, this is from this collection. If you want more or you want us to read the rest of them,
I see what
Um,
you're saying. I see what you're saying.
um, Also, considering how well you did in Comic Con, you could also be that linchpin of the short story thing. It's like short stories by Scott Campbell and some buddies of mine, that kind of thing.
Huh.
Uh, Considering how successful you were on that. So, I mean, either way, but that could be, again, since you're already in the short story format, that could be something that you might leverage.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I mean, like honestly, like right now, my brain, it's just moving to a new apartment. Just trying to get that all furnished and all the craziness going on here at the office and all that.
Which
It's
we
like
did forget to mention. We are actually at the studio here at White Moon
it's
Dreams,
true.
your company.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. My gosh, it's been over 16 years since
Yes.
we formed this sucker. God, I feel old. Uh,
But yes, on top of and again, we can't really go into detail of what you're doing here in the office,
yeah,
but on top of all the work you're doing here in the office, which I personally know is a shit ton, um, the things going on in your personal life,
yeah.
which again, I don't want to get into because it's your personal stuff, but I know you've had some issues.
Yeah, I mean, medical stuff. All I gotta say is, diabetes sucks, folks. Sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
And then with all that going on, you kicked this book out in less than 6 months, got everything set up at Comic Con, which is just absolutely breakneck speed. Like, I'm finishing up my last one. I spent a damn year on the thing, right? And, I mean, I've had a lot of shit going on in my life too, but
yeah.
which it does get in the way of the writing process. But I mean, it still took me a year, and you cranked this thing out in like over a weekend. Uh, slight exaggeration. I mean, you're kicking this thing out like at Stephen King speeds right now,
Yeah.
you know.
What is it? Diarrhea of the typewriter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That to me was really what was so impressive
Hmm.
was, and on top of that, it was good.
I mean that
Like, how dare you make it look this fucking easy? What's the matter with you?
I am absolutely not the kind of person that, like ever pats myself on the back. I mean, usually when I go through anything I've ever written, all I see are the errors and the things that could have been and things like
Mhm.
that. But people have said that it's a fun read. As a matter of fact, I have not yet received a negative criticism about the book.
All right, the
So
closest was from me.
well, I mean, everything you told me was I was just like, yep, yep,
Yeah,
okay, yep, that's right. And a few of the things I was like, even like, oh yeah, I intended that
yeah.
to be a thing. Um, but
We
even then, yeah, enjoying getting to the end of the book and putting it down and going, hey, that wasn't bad. Apparently, that's the overall theme that everyone's been giving me.
we did the review, and Alex was like, "Okay, it's your boss, so this is going to be the best book ever." And I was like, "No, we're going to do an honest review. We're going to be fair." But and if you're interested in a review, check out our review on that. But yeah, no, the and I told you already. I thought the prologue was really strong, which was a really good way to kick it off. Um, but then I thought like chapter one was a really slow, and I was that's when I was like, oh man, I don't know. But once we got to the severed penis, I was back on board.
Yep,
Uh,
yep. The chapters are fairly small.
yes,
I
it didn't
wanted
take long.
Yeah, I wanted to keep all the chapters very bite-sized, just mostly because I mean I just wanted this to be something that like it didn't feel like oh my God I have like 50 pages here to get to the next chapter or anything like that. I wanted it to feel like it was fast, a brisk read, because the overall like pacing and the building of that tension and horror and stuff like that, it needs to come at you more like an action movie, I thought. So I tried to keep things, like low on the, long diatribes or, going into like what people are thinking and all that stuff. It's more of just like he did this,
Yeah.
continue on, drive the story forward.
Once we got to the Priory, which was,
Yeah.
I mean, we're only talking like what, chapter five by
I
that
think
point?
it was chapter 5, yeah.
Right. And like you said, these chapters are short, so it's not like it's not like you had to read through half of The Stand to get through here, right?
Yeah.
That's when it started picking up, and that's when I was like, okay, then I'm not going to lose my job by giving an honest review on this. This is going to go. So I mean, yeah, it just like to me, the first chapter was like the worst chapter, and then two was a little bit better. By the time we got to five, I'm like, okay, we're out of the rough patch, and then the rest of it was just, like I said, by the time we got to Severed Penis, I'm like, I am back on board. Let's go. And then that's the point where I was like, I need to keep reading. That's when I'm like, this is not just for the podcast. This is not just because this is because I want to know what the hell's going to happen next at that point. That's when I'm sold. So yeah, no, it is a very good book. And just again, the sheer small amount of time, it's just how dare you make it look that easy?
Yeah,
Shame on you.
honestly, I thought it was going to be a novella. I thought it was actually going to be, just maybe, 40,000 words or something like that. But then when I, really started putting all these bullet points together and I busted out a couple of chapters and I did the multiplication. I'm like, okay, if there's going to be like, what is it, 42 chapters or whatever's in the thing, and I'm like multiply it by this. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be much larger.
It's a
So
decent sized book.
yeah,
I mean,
it actually turned out to be like 86,000 words, which technically is a novel. Yee! So yeah, I am pretty happy with it. Looking back, there's a couple of like just niggling little spelling errors and stuff like that that somehow slipped through. So
well, that's the nice thing about print on demand. You
yeah,
can just fix it, and so the next run,
yeah.
what spelling error? I didn't.
Yeah, I never saw that. Yep. There is an issue with that though. If you do that, and it's a change, you have to give a new ISBN. Um,
No,
well, this is what I was told.
no,
But
no. You can just upload the text. I do it all
okay.
the. I've done it a couple times. I've had
Interesting.
when I did the last write, I relied on computer generated edit. Well, not computer generated, but I relied on the computer to
To
be
to do like
the editing. And earlier prints had a lot of errors, and so I had a friend of mine go through and start editing it.
mm-hmm.
And so we went through and I just re-upload the text to KDP and to Barnes and Noble Press
Yep.
and to Lulu and to Ingram Spark, which
Yep.
is the four I use. Please tell me there's not any more. Um, and it was good. And then same thing happened with the first ISF because I had my friend, the same one that edited the last write, edited ISF, and somebody caught some errors in that as well. So I paid somebody else to edit it again. And so
It's just so easy.
well, that's one reason why I don't like relying on the computer for editing. So I have two people I work with for editing. One is and you probably know her, David's wife. Um, um, David from Labs, who works. Yeah, who
Yes. Okay.
yeah, your
That
your
David. All right.
your employee.
Yeah.
His wife actually edited ISF2 and edited Short Bites. And
Interesting.
she's pretty good and very cheap. So I think Morgan, who is also a coworker here, is working on his book, and
Hmm.
he's maybe going to talk to Shannon about editing.
Interesting.
But for the next book, for a couple of reasons, I am going back to the editor of The Baby Eater, and that's Liam Ford.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons why I don't use Liam for everything is because he is extremely expensive. Um, I mean, I'm looking at about $1,500 right now is what I'm quoted to edit the next book. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
All
no,
right.
no, it's pricey. It's pricey. He's good. He's damn good. He, um, but the other reason why I'm using Liam for the next book is because Shannon does not like hardcore horror.
I gotcha.
She did do Short Bites, so
Hmm.
which is more of like a PG-13 horror. That
Yeah,
she was fine with.
I
She
gotcha.
she actually enjoyed that book. But the next one, I'm going to have like kids getting beaten. I'm going to
Yeah.
have monsters literally monsters under the bed.
Yeah. All,
Uh,
all, all the great stuff.
oh yeah, uh, plus a little incest just for fun.
Why not sprinkle
Sure.
it in there? Yep. Uh, well, so talking about editors and things like that, I actually had three editors on that book. One of them was Claude.ai.
Right.
One of them was ChatGPT, and then finally, my what pre-fiance, Andrea, I didn't realize that she was an absolute speed reader and could still like edit and such like that as she went. So she did a final pass on everything.
Good.
So she had, as I was literally busting out chapter by chapter, she was reading it as I was putting, as getting it out. And then when it was all put together as one story, she reread it one more time with the passive editing and such like that, and found a few things. But honestly, between like the two AI programs, it did a fantastic job. Um, you could ask it certain questions about like, you know, uh, what do you think about this chapter compared to other chapters? Like how what is so far the pacing of everything? Or just tell me what you think about the book, right? So I give the entire text document to the AI, and it would sit and crunch on it a little bit, and then it would come back with actual feedback on like, okay, and it said the same thing that you were literally just saying. It's like strong prologue, get you interested in the book. Chapter one is kind of bland. There's not a whole lot going on there. They're like, maybe you should put something into, some kind of foreshadowing into some,
Hmm.
future events and things like that. And on and on and on it went, but it said overall the pacing's really good. It builds up like this, and it actually pointed out a couple of like places in the book that said this is actually really, really good because it's a great twist. And at the end, it was like, well, we really enjoyed this book and blah blah. I was just like, wait a minute, this actually seems like I'm reading like an actual letter from a human being. It wasn't scary. I was just like marveling at how good it was. Because I agreed with pretty much everything it was saying to me. And I eventually got it to the point where I was like feeding it chapter by chapter, and I was just like, okay, analyze this, use my writing style, fix any grammatical errors, blah blah blah, and don't change the words unless you need to, and then spit it out. And then I would literally just clip the chapter that it gave me and then throw it into a document and move on.
Now, based on your recommendation, I have been trying Claude,
Hmm.
and I tried to give it Fear, which
The
is
whole book,
the
right?
whole book,
Yeah.
and it kind of choked on it.
So, how much? Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember how much data you can have for like the pro edition gives you like I thought it was like a couple of hundred K or something like that. Um,
I don't know. I am paying for it.
yeah, I mean so like I remember very distinctly I was able to give it the entire book as like a text format,
Hmm.
and it was fine.
Yeah.
And did the whole thing, understood it all. And as I was kicking out the chapters, I was giving it one chapter at a time, and I had this giant long chat window with all the chapters in it and all the responses of what it would do with the bullet points and things like that. And it finally reached a point where it's like, hey, this is getting kind of long. Maybe we should start a new thread. And but it was so good at being able to remember everything that I had given it and talked about, characters and sets and scenery. And
That was my problem giving it Fears because I would upload it and I would ask it a question and it would answer, and then I was done. I could not.
it was
It's
just like out of
the
memory.
next question
Yeah.
is like, no, we've hit our limit, and I'm like, well, this is not gonna help a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I mean, one thing, yeah, I know. It's only getting better though, is all I can say. Is I have a sneaking suspicion that they've actually lowered the amount the data size that you can actually upload to the AI, because that's a lot of storage that they would have to be fighting over on like servers and things like that, and that's probably very expensive for them. But new versions are coming out all the damn time.
mhm.
And I think if you had put it onto a website and gave it a web address for it to look at, it doesn't actually. It's like the memory limits are different,
Okay.
because it's not having to store an entire document. It can refer back to the website. But again, I'm not sure exactly how all the dark voodoo magic is happening in the background. Um, but yeah, there are ways of getting it to give you what you want.
Do you have any more convention plans set up? You got a book, you got
Oh,
to sell it.
well, I mean, what I've really been focusing on now is, I mean, I haven't even really been thinking about conventions and stuff. When I last left off on the book, I want to send it to a couple of people that, I just they've always been like, people that I've always wanted to talk to, and I think this would be a great opener. So like, there's basically like the king of all things Lovecraft. His name is St. Joshi. I couldn't ever say it because I've never met him in person, but he's like a huge inspiration for me. I've read he had several uh, uh, anthology books of Lovecraft that are all annotated, and they're amazing. They're spot on, and so I wanted to send him one of the books just to say hey. But I'm also thinking of like I love Guillermo del Toro, and I know that he's a fan of Lovecraft as well. So I'm like maybe I can find his agent or something else, and I'll just
Now you're
send it to
starting to
them.
sound
And
like Alex.
yeah, exactly. But I'm also like, you know what? This would make a great mini Netflix series. So what the hell? Let's send it to Netflix. It's like,
You figure out how to do that, please let me know.
okay. I mean,
Because
I know some people who know some people,
he'll,
but
they'll be getting more than just your book once we figure that part out. I can tell you that right
you know,
now. Um,
but
when we did HorrorCon,
uh,
Sunday was dead because the Emmys were right next door,
oh, there you go.
and
Yep.
all the rows were closed. And
Uh,
Alex like, "What's going on?" It's like the Emmys are next door. Alex like, "I got an idea." Like they're not going to let you within 100
exactly.
yards of
Holding the
that
books.
place.
Yeah, buy this, take this. Yeah, I know
I got an idea. No, Alex, it's not going to work.
it's
You're not
like
going.
no one wants to get solicited material like that. They just
No.
don't. And oftentimes, their policy is when they get solicited material, they can't even look at it because if it's close to something that they already have in production, then they it could a lawyer could in fact say, hey, you got that idea from reading this something that my client gave you, and even though it's not true, it could look like it is.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get it all, but I might just do it anyway. Uh, the other thing.
I had a similar problem in the last ride,
Hmm.
actually, because
Oh yeah, the dialogue, the spoken dialogue, right?
well, no, because the original concept of the last ride was we are like, hey, we know what would make it for a really good movie or a really good because it was originally supposed to be a CGI series, so we wrote them as 12 scripts,
Hmm.
and I said, you know what would make for a really good show, Silent Hill. And then literally
See.
the moment we said that, not only did they announce they were making the Silent Hill movie, but the company I was working for at the time, Double Helix, got the contract to do Silent Hill Homecoming.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So just to prevent that, you know, illusion of impropriety, I didn't want anybody to even think that I was cribbing off of
Yeah.
what we were running.
Yep.
We shelved that all for the entire, and I didn't even touch it until Silent Hill was done and over with. And then, like, I think it was a year later, I said, okay, now I think it's safe to get back to this.
I hear you.
So,
I hear you.
sorry, you were going to say something. I cut you
Oh
off.
no, no. All I was gonna say, the thing I've been thinking about now is uh, just how to get an audio version of the book done, and that's and yeah, I could I had a couple of people that I love their voices. I love all the books that they read, and I was thinking about using them. Um, some of them are very difficult to get a hold of,
Hmm.
and at the same time, I've been told from several sources that, hey, Scott, you should just read your own damn book and narrate it yourself. And the more I think about it, I'm like, well, maybe, but it's just I don't have any damn time. And I know this would take a considerable amount of time to do, but it is right. It's like I know all the cues. I know in my head, how all the characters should be speaking and where all the info the emphasis is and like all the speeches and that kind of stuff. So it's like yeah, there is something to be said about that, but I don't know. I think my voice is a little squeaky. So I think I'd much rather have a professional really do this. And
Well, you can go on ACX
yep.
and do auditions.
Yep. I've heard that as well. Yep, and I just really haven't gotten to it yet, or should I say, I haven't gotten serious about it yet. But it is coming up. I know that. But basically, by the end of the year, I would like to have an audiobook out there as well. Because right now it is you can get the print on demand soft cover. You can also get the digital ebook on Amazon and I think on Apple's iBook.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay, and I think
Have,
that's them.
have you put it on Barnes and Noble Press?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. The reason I say that is because, in theory, and I say it that way because I've not actually crossed whatever magic threshold this is, but if enough people go to Barnes and Noble and order the book
Hmm.
through Barnes and Noble, they'll start stocking it on the shelf. So
Oh, snap.
that's one of
Oh.
the things that makes that attractive is actually there's a couple of independent authors I know that have actually seen their books in the wild. And it's just amazing. I'm like,
Wow.
when the fuck is my going to get here? So I have no idea what that magic number is. I don't know if it's 100. I don't know if it's a million. No clue. Um, I also go through Barnes and Noble Press because unlike Amazon, you can get the jacketed hardcover, which I think looks really nice. Um,
Hmm.
Amazon will do the solid hardcover now, so you can do a hardcover, but it's a solid print. Um, but you can do the jacketed at Barnes and Noble Press. You can also do the
Hmm.
jacketed at Ingram Spark, and there's another reason to want to go through Ingram Spark.
Yeah,
And
I am going through Ingram Spark for pretty much everything.
okay,
Yeah, those guys rock. I mean, I had I mean, not only is their website really fantastic, I was able to give them everything they wanted, but when they had an issue with something I had uploaded and the site was kind of not telling me exactly what it was, it was so easy. I mean, I called them up, somebody like answered like immediately, and I was like, "Here's my problem," and they're like, "Okay, no problem, just do this and it'll all be good." I'm like, are you kidding me? That's it? And then all the email correspondence and everything else, I was like, this is crazy. It's very
they
good.
used to have a reputation for being a pain in the ass to use.
Really.
I think they've addressed it. Is
Oh,
my point. Is they had because it used to even cost to set up your book in Ingram Spark.
oh, really?
There used to be a fee for that, and I think they've changed that to where it's like no, just upload. And then you did set your books on Ingram Spark to be returnable.
Actually, I don't think I did.
So here's where I put it on Ingram Spark
Hmm.
because I was trying to go to the local Barnes and Noble and say, hey, I would like to do a book signing. And they said, well, we can't do that because your books are not returnable. And I'm like, they're published by Barnes and Noble.
They're not returnable?
They're not returnable. So what happens is you go to Ingram Spark and you set basically the retail, you set the retail price, but you also set the wholesale price.
Mm-hmm.
So since my book is on Ingram Spark, like yours, some independent bookshop in Tucson can order the book and put it on the shelf, right? But they will only do that typically if it's returnable. So first of all, they're only paying,
Oh, I totally get it. I
right?
see what you're saying.
And Barnes and Noble wanted that because they wanted to be able to order 50 books, and then
Yep.
if 50 books didn't sell, they can return them.
Yep. And they're not out any money, and
Exactly.
and whoever eats the publisher basically eats the money. Yep.
Yeah. Well, the way I have it set up is that if it's in America, it actually gets returned to me, and I eat the money.
Geez. Okay.
I've only had one book show up that way, and I was like, it showed up at random, and one copy
One
of The
book.
Last Rite, and I
Yep.
was like, okay,
And they're
and
like, I want my $10. Yep.
basically, yeah. Well, it was a paperback, so it was out like 5.50, I think, or
Oh,
something like that.
that's funny.
Um, so yeah,
Oh.
it's definitely set it for returnable, especially if you want to do any kind of book signings,
Hmm.
because that's going to help you out there. Um, And again, audience, if you have any better advice, this is just my experience, what I found. If you have better options, please call into the podcast. Phones are on standby. You know,
Or
dial 1
24/7.
800 fictional phone.
Uh-huh.
And but that was my experience. So if I learn anything different, I will, of course, pass it
Yeah,
on to you
yeah.
and the audience. But yeah, make it returnable, and then try setting it up on Barnes and Noble and see if you can't get enough traction on that to get actually in the stores. Because that's when we ship Starblood, like I still geek out that something I worked on is in a box
Yeah,
on a shelf
yeah.
at the Walmart behind the case that you can go in there and pick it up, and my name's in the credits. So I still geek out. I am still yearning for the day when uh, my book is just going to be on a shelf or on a table somewhere on Barnes and Noble's like Halloween special, and it's
Yep,
just going to be there,
yep.
marked down the 350 or whatever, but fuck it, it's still there.
Exactly. You can still walk in and say, I did that. Yep, yep.
But yeah, definitely check on that, and definitely check out. We got plenty of horror cons here in Southern California.
This is true.
We have a plethora of horror cons that I'm sure you would do very well in.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I mean, again, we'll see. I think maybe I if I do the other book in a decent amount of time, like a year or so, then perhaps next year, maybe this time, um, I'll start thinking about like some, conventions or whatnot to go to. But as it is right now, it's like I am just I'm full, man. It's like
yeah,
I haven't given the book much of a thought. It's a little bit between being busy and also like I think anyone that's like really put in a bunch of time to create something will understand what I mean when like you put all this effort and love into something and then it's done and you just need that time to kind of go, oh, okay, it's done.
yeah.
It's cool. It's there, it exists. I'm gonna put it down for a while and walk away and take a deep breath and then, a little bit later I'll probably walk back and kind of like, rediscover it as it were and go, oh yeah, I did this. Hey, that's pretty cool. But right now I'm still at that kind of point where I'm just like, all right, I did it. Excellent, but there's other things to be done and I'll get back to
No, I hear that. That's one reason my house is a mess because I'm too
it.
busy writing. Anywho,
But anyway, yeah. So I mean, let's see. Self-promotion, self-promotion. Gotta think about self-promotion.
yeah, where can they find the book? Where can they find you?
Oh, that's right. If you are looking for the book, you can go to www. What is it? theratsbeneaththewalls.com. That will take you to the website where you can immediately purchase the book, either the digital format or get a print-on-demand copy. You could also go to oh my gosh, I don't want to give the wrong website, but I believe it's well, actually, you know what? theratsbeneaththewalls.com will take you to the publishing site and also my little cheesy website that I set up. And you can also buy the book. So yeah, everything is there. Anything you could ever want is there. It'll also take you to our Instagram that we constantly need to update. And let's see. I think also not our Facebook, but our
Is it on Amazon?
it is on Amazon, yes.
Okay.
So the Kindle version and the iBook version, the links to purchasing them are all there. But anyway, just take a look at it. It's good. It's fun stuff.
All right. Well, Scott, thank you much for appearing on the Indie Author Showcase
Love it. Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime with book number 2.
with book number 2. And in lieu of Alex not being here, let me say on his behalf, toodaloo. It is our best sign off. I swear to God, I got to find a better sign off.
Toodaloo.
Alex came up with toodaloo, and I kept swearing up and down. It's like we're not doing toodaloo, and now
It just now it's stuck on you.
we're in like 20 some odd episodes, and now it's just kind of like I feel like it's just wrong
I see.
because Alex isn't here. So pouring one out for the boy,
Yep.
toodaloo.
The Toodaloo. All
And
right.
I say it with great regret. Toodaloo.
Gotta,
Damn you, Alex!
gotta get an AI and with a prompt. Hey, I need a sign off for my show. Not Toodaloo. Yeah.
Well, he's secretly trying to sabotage the showcase so that way he doesn't have to do it anymore. So, and I say secretly, and he's actually doing it quite purposely now and
Mm-hmm.
quite overtly. So
I see.
I
Yep.
think I think it's this one act of sabotage that is now stuck. So
Ah,
so toodaloo.